Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live. And today is Saturday, and I'm going to say something more personal and about my decision to become a consultant. So let's go to my screen to see better. And as always, this is Andreas Letros, and welcome to my live. Why I became a consultant, the gap I saw in quality management systems. And so for years, I was the person implementing digital solutions and talking to suppliers, ordering computers, and leading the digital transformation as a quality engineer, working for a big corporate environment, for a big company. And this is me when I started. And this is me when it started working. And you may see a little bit of a difference in me, which means that some time passed actually from the time it started and the time it worked. And after working with multiple IT companies and QMS providers, I started becoming very frustrated with the structure. And I was realizing that most solutions were creating more pain than good, and actually for very little reward. It was Many solutions were overpriced and were complicating our life, but the reward after a year or after 2 years from that was very minimal actually, and everybody knew that. But when we started realizing it, nothing could really change because the investment was already made and it had to bring back the money. And since it didn't bring back the money, it didn't bring back the reward we were expecting for, we had to keep working until it was going to make it. And we were always secretly joking that Excel would have been much better than this QMS solution. And that was true because the Excel is very flexible. On the other side, the QMS solution is very structured and it has to be in a specific way that works for every single factory. On the other side, Excel is very flexible. You can do whatever you want. So that's why everybody was doing the same joke. And this is when I started entertaining the idea to provide quality digital solutions that use the least amount of resources possible, cut all the fluff, and stay highly adaptable to its business. Because in the case of my company, any solution that we applied had very little to no benefit if we wouldn't make something ourselves, something flexible, adapted to the system we were using. And so today, I am going to show you my worst three nightmares with the quality systems I found when I was working. So, the first nightmare is when the programmer or provider had never set a foot on a shop floor. So what was happening is that many times the provider or person that was building the program was had an IT background, maybe had never entered on a shop floor, and it was very obvious on the way that it was created that he didn't have any. Sometimes there was no compassion about the operators or the person who was writing, and there were unnecessary steps. But you could realize it when you were speaking to the person and the person was explaining or was teaching the program, that everything that was saying was IT terms that a person working in a factory doesn't really understand. The trigger is activated, this thing and this server, and how to do that. And when you talk to a person who works in a factory in IT terms, means that you don't really understand how to explain me the complicated stuff in an easy way. On the other side, when I was really explaining the pain points of the business of the factory, and we're trying to make some practical recommendations and asking for some practical things, the person was not really understanding because I was speaking a language of the factory. And if you don't really go yourself to see how the factory works and see the operators working and see the reality of the factory, is that when something is complicated, when something is complicated in a factory, the person is not going to use it anymore. And when you make something that makes the person's life easier, even if it's ugly, if the person is going to use it, then of course we were speaking a different language. And that was really frustrating for me because I couldn't really explain how I am going to how I'm going to reach the business perspective, the business goals from these two. And this was starting getting obvious there. So, for example, when we wanted to do the quality registration, the system was having a lot of unnecessary buttons and a lot of unnecessary steps and a lot of different information that needed to be compiled and a lot of different um, and a little different path that the operator had to go through until it arrived at the end to register the data. But what I was always hoping for and what works in a factory and makes the operator not really resent you for making them do the data registration is doing something like this, having something straightforward. I click the least amount of buttons necessary. I register the least amount of data necessary so that I can have I can really reach my goal and register the data as quickly as possible. And of course, when you have a person that on the other side that doesn't really understand how the factory works, you can trust him that he is going to help you reach your targets and get the reward that you're expecting as a factory, for example, to reduce your scraps or improve your quality or improve, decrease the reworks or whatever other target you have. Because the person speaks with IT terms, and that was really frustrating me. And I was realizing that this table doesn't really care about me reaching my goals. Which, on the other side, when I started saying I would become a consultant, and I started entertaining the idea, I was started thinking that yes, this is something that I should care about. I should really guarantee my clients that they're going to get the results. I don't want to build something that is IT good from IT perspective, but should be good from factory perspective. And let's go on the second thing. The maintenance was actually a mess. And what I mean by that is that for the QMS system I was working with, you had to duplicate the information that you were entering inside. You had to duplicate uh, your process control plan and every single new model that you had, every single machine, every single quote. Every time you had to insert to the system so that the operator is able to see the quotes, the tolerances, and everything that he has to register. And copy pasting and duplicating the process control plan is exhausting, and it's a new work, is a lot of work for someone to do because you have to duplicate. Let's say that you work in a very big company that I was working for. You have to duplicate 10 quotes, and we're producing 10 models per month for 10 machines, which means that I had to add 1,000 new quotes a month, which was unsustainable. And you have to actually pay a person to do that because it's a part-time job to do it. And you have to be always sure that everything is updated, and you have to be always sure that the tolerances are inserted in the system because it wasn't taking data from process control plan, it wasn't taking data from the drawing, it wasn't taking data from one source that we agreed that it was the easiest for us to add the information. And actually, for every single factor and for every single product, it's different. So I understand why it was happening because you can't really create something for that satisfy all the companies. So you create something generic, everybody enters the data inside, and then you have all the tolerance in the system. But what works for me is when you have a process control plan and you write down your codes and your tolerances and all your models that you're using in somewhere in your system, in an Excel file, in a different environment. The digital system should be responsible for taking all this information from there and not asking you to duplicate information all the time. or at least asking you to write the information in the simplest way as possible. And so every time I had to maintain the system, I was a little bit like that. I was confused and I was very tired without providing any value actually for my company. If I was tired by working on reducing the cost, on improving a machine, or doing a modification on a recipe, that would make sense. But being tired for duplicating information so that the quality management system works, I don't know where is the benefit. And I'm going to show you the third thing. And this is why I started working with Power BI actually. The information available was so superficial that we could not get any real feedback about the production. So I think that this is not a problem of a quality management system. I think it's the problem when you create a generic tool that a lot of factories use. Because when you're working in a factory, you want your information to go as quickly as possible and you want as little fluff as possible. You want to know exactly how much, for example, to compare the different quotes and to have a visualization that tells a story immediately. In order to do that, you really need to understand how this specific factor in this specific product is working. If you don't really know how it's working, if you try to make something generic, it's not going to land ever. It's not going to give any real information. So yes, we had complicated dashboard with 60 filters that do not really show anything. If you have to put a lot of filters, if the dashboard is confusing for me, for a person that has gone 5 years in university and is working with data for maybe half of his life and being find it difficult to find information, then nobody can find information. And I will show you an example now about how I was working. When, for example, I had to control some panels, and in these panels there were four different angles. That angle, the left side, the left top, the bottom left, sorry, the bottom right, and we had to compare the different angles. And what I really needed was actually something like this. But what I was getting was something like this. Let me make my screen a little bit bigger. And so what I needed was something that was comparing to different angles, and so it would tell me a story which angle is the wrong one, or to compare the different models, or compare different recipes, so that I can make a decision quickly. But what was happening was I was getting something like that. And with that, you cannot really say a story. I had to, like, in order to find out information about different angles and different models, I had to do 6 minute filters, which not very sustainable if you have limited time. And this is the reason why, actually, let me put myself together back. This is why the reason why I started learning about Power BI, because we had the data from different sources and we needed to combine them together and actually get the information we needed quickly. And we needed a lot of flexibility. And so that's why I built Power BI so that we can, first and foremost, so that we can connect information from the QMS system and the different Excels that we're having or the ERP together in one platform so that we have the information connected and not just sparse everywhere. And the other thing was we needed information that is presented in a specific way, as the thing that I showed you before, as this one, or compare the different models. And the only way to do that was through Power BI, through making a custom dashboard. And actually, that's what I'm proposing. I don't really believe in having a generic tool and a generic application that works for every single factory, but I believe that every single factory should make its own system that is the leanest possible for them and works for them and gives them the information as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, you need to be able to use the least amount of resources so that it's affordable, as affordable as possible. So, um, this is the today's live today. It was a little bit short. Thank you for watching. As I told you, I took the decision to become a consultant not because I was always dreaming to become a consultant, but because I saw a need and I saw that I was really getting frustrated with what was out there. And the three things that were really frustrating me and were not really helping me do the job done. Let me maximize. Were not really helping me to do the job done. Was first and foremost that with the IT providers, we were not really speaking the same language, and I realized that they have never showed themselves on the shop floor, created a problem for the shop floor, a program for the shop floor, but they never saw how a shop floor works and the mentality of the operators and how and the concept of being as lean as possible because every single hour counts, and we were speaking a different language, and I was not really trusting that they can help me reach the goals of the factory I was working for. The second thing was that the maintenance was a mess because you had duplicate information. Because when you have your information in one place that works for you, a process control plan or somewhere that are there all the drawings, but you need to take all this information, duplicate it so that the quality management system works. And especially if you have a very big company or a very complicated production with a lot of models, this is not very sustainable. And it can be a part-time job just to update the quality management system. And the third thing was the visualization part, that it's not a problem. I still am saying it's not a problem with the quality management systems. It's a problem of when you make something generic, it's not really, you're not really able to satisfy every factory's process. And in order to get the information you need to take action actually and to reduce your scraps, improve your quality, you need to have very, you need to go very in depth and understand the process and give information that tells actually the story immediately without doing filters. So this is for now. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next live with a lot of technical details and less stories, but more practical tips and tools to use. Thank you very much.